land in Virginia, where we've come from, where we're at, and where we're going. How do I do the...
How do you do it for you?
Oh, okay. Yes, the Virginia Solar Energy Development and Energy Storage Authority, we used to have a nice acronym, VESIDA, when it was just the Solar Energy Development Authority. And then the legislature came in and they threw storage on and they ruined our acronym. So I just think going forward, they need to think about things like that before they go mucking with legislation. So I'm just going to kind of go through this by sector, beginning with distributed generation, net metering in Virginia. You all probably know what this means. I've been tracking this since the net metering law went into effect back in 1999. And you can see from this graph here that there wasn't a whole lot going on for the first 10 years. It was pretty pitiful, in fact. Those two red lines that you see there, that was during the period when the Stimulus Act was in effect, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. We got a bunch of money from the Department of Energy, and we implemented several renewable energy incentive programs. And I sort of feel like we lit the fuse on this. The money went away. We expected that curve to drop off and be flat again, and it didn't. It continued up. During that period, I think the prices on solar panels had dropped so much that people started looking at it as cost competitive, and so we've gone from less than a megawatt over the first 10 years. We're up to 50 megawatts now and growing. And I will say about distributed generation and net metering, it's under attack in all 50 states by utilities and other interests. This is where the jobs are. The jobs aren't on the large solar farms. The jobs are on the smaller distributed systems, on homes and businesses, farms and whatnot. So I just think we really need to be cognizant of that going forward, that yes, it's great that all these large solar farms are going in, but if you want the jobs and the employment figures, it's the distributed generation that drives that. Moving on to utility. So up until 2016, third quarter 2016, there was zero. There was no utility scale solar in Virginia whatsoever. The largest system was a 2 megawatt system installed at Norfolk Naval Base. It was behind the meter arrangement. In October 2016, Dominion launched the 80 megawatt Amazon project on the eastern shore in Accomack County. And that sort of opened the floodgates, and it's just taken off, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop. Next. Electric co-ops have gotten on board. 3 co-ops so far have decided that solar has come down to the point, and their customers have been demanding it enough that they're going to start doing it. And if you drive just about 20 miles east of here, the Shannon Hill exit off of I-64, there's a 5 megawatt system about 2 minutes off the interstate exit, if you want to go visit that. That's Central Virginia Electric Cooperatives project. Next. And even the municipal utilities. Municipal utilities are non-jurisdictional. They don't have to abide by any of the rules that the IOUs and the co-ops have to, but they've decided that, again, like the others, that the costs have come down enough and their customers' demand has been such that they're jumping into it. And this, Beth Baker from DEQ is going to talk about the permit by rule, but this is just a map on their website that shows all of the projects that are proposed, the large utility scale projects, scattered all over the states. The reddish ones are permits that are somewhere in the permitting process. The yellow ones have been permitted, but you can see there's a really good distribution of these things across the state, except for Southwest Virginia. And, we're making that one of our target regions in the coming year. We're looking at doing things on abandoned and reclaimed mine lands. We think there's a lot of opportunity out there. It's just that for whatever reason, everything stopped at Blacksburg. Next. And at the state level, getting our own house in order, Angela alluded to this, we have a renewable procurement goal of 8% of all the electricity that's used at state facilities coming from renewable energy. That's 110 megawatts. This was enacted under the McAuliffe administration, only in Dominion service territory because they're the largest provider to state facilities. And how we're going to do that, of that 110 megawatts, 75% of that is going to be from utility-owned and operated systems, and then there was an intention to do 25% as third-party power purchase agreements. Yep. So we've already committed to 3 projects, 4 if you count the Remington project, but that we're not buying the renewable attributes from that project. That's a public-private partnership with Microsoft, and they're getting the RECs, we're getting the solar electrons, but we have committed to the Oceana project, which is 18 megawatts, and then UVA is really leading the charge at the university level. They've got 2 large projects underway, and they're doing a lot of rooftop installations also, and we're looking for ways to help the other universities follow suit. And then Angela already talked about Senate Bill 966, 5,000 megawatts. If you think there are issues at the counties now, just wait, because there's a lot of big stuff coming down the pipe. And how we compare to our neighbors. North Carolina, Steve Allen's in the room, he'll probably talk about that a little bit. I believe, are you still number 2 in the country?
We're holding on by our fingernails.
Yeah. 4,000 megawatts. Lots and lots and lots of little 5 megawatt utility scale projects.
I like that they're called little.
Yeah. Maryland, tiny little Maryland, almost 900 megawatts. We're up to, these numbers are a little bit out of date, we're up to about 619 megawatts. So there's a ton of room for growth in Virginia. Again, with Senate Bill 966, I believe it's coming, and we need to be prepared. We need to learn from the lessons learned in other states like North Carolina. There have been some issues there, but I think venues like this will be a good opportunity to help grease the skids and prevent some of those problems from happening. And that is all I had to say, unless anyone has any questions.
Yes.
I can. Can you give us an update on the PPA portion of the state procurement?
I was hoping not to go there. The PPA portion of the 8% goal was fraught with all kinds of issues. We're having a very hard time doing third-party PPAs. There was a point initially when the state controller's office flat out told us, you cannot enter into third-party power purchase arrangements because they're long-term capital leases. Well, we argued they're not capital leases. We're not leasing anything. We're buying the output from a solar energy system. We consider them a contract for goods and services. Well, they pushed back, and we pushed back, and they pushed back, and we pushed back, and that went on for months and months and months and months and months. And so we just gave up. And then one day we get a letter from the state controller's office that he's reviewed the information again and feels that they are no longer contracts or no longer.
It was miraculous.
It was miraculous. Well, so now theoretically, if they're structured properly, they are allowed. We have not pursued it though. We have moved on to other things. We're doing some building-specific solar projects that we're funding through leftover stimulus funds, but we're leaving it up to the agencies themselves at this point to decide whether they want to enter into a long-term PPA with the developer. So if there are developers like Tony and others in the room go knock on doors and see what happens. I'd love to see it happen, but, we just kind of got jaded on the whole issue. It's very hard doing work at state facilities.
Amen. One follow-up question, Ken, isn't there also another barrier as far as the state contract with the IOUs that would have to be amended to allow for PPAs?
You're talking about the fact that we have a master contract with the...
Correct.
Yeah, the state buys all of their electricity on two large master contracts, one with Dominion and one with Appalachian Power, with Dominion being the largest. Outside of those service territories, agencies are basically under the jurisdiction of whatever, they buy their power on the market like any other person does. But theoretically, since we're on this master contract with Dominion, we are not allowed to buy our power from a third-party provider. Under the agreement that we have for this 110 megawatts, we worked out a deal with Dominion, and they agreed to this 25%. That's what they capped it at. They said, you're not allowed to do it because you're contractually obligated to us, to buy from us, but we're going to let you do this 25%. Again, so far, that we haven't even opened the door on that one yet.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Hannah Coleman from the Southern Environmental Law Center. You mentioned that DMME is looking at targeting Southwest Virginia to develop solar on abandoned mine lands.
Yes.
Could you say a little bit more about that and where you are in that process? And what you're thinking
We're
about?
at the very beginning of that process. That's one of the things that came up in our strategic planning this year. If you drive out there, there are a lot of surface mine sites that have been reclaimed and they're just sitting empty. There were also a lot of sites that have not been reclaimed yet, and then there are a lot of sites that are actively being mined. And so there are different opportunities at all three of those levels. For the reclaimed sites, it's land that's available, and we want developers to know that there's land out there available. It's graded, it's got a lot of good opportunities to.
Have you looked into interconnection?
That's one of the things that you have to look at. And at a lot of mine sites, there is nearby transmission because mining operations use a lot of electricity. So let's take an active mining operations, for example. When they do the reclamation plan, if they know there's going to be an end use, like a solar development or a Walmart, and a lot of that goes on, a lot of these sites get developed with Walmarts and strip malls, but if they know there's going to be an end use, they don't necessarily have to reclaim it to the same level that they would have otherwise. They don't necessarily need to grade it back to what the original grade was and the original elevations and whatnot. And they can work with a company that wants to move in there and reclaim it to what that company's needs are. So there are opportunities there.
Thank you.